All right, so I've been getting a lot of emails and messages from you guys, beginner boxers who are struggling in their sparring. Now, the initial hurdle of sparring is getting in there for the first time, getting over the nerves, figuring out what to do, getting used to shots coming at you, the whole initial experience. But what comes after that, once you have sort of a basic game plan and you're used to what's coming at you, the next struggle is, how long can I last? Or how can I maintain the pace and get through the later rounds? If you're in sparring with a sparring partner who's making you fight, in other words, they're making you work, you're gonna find that around the third or fourth round is when you start to crash. That's when things fall apart. And this is sort of the message that I'm getting from you beginner boxers is, everything is all fine. And then around the third or fourth round, I just start to fall apart. Hands are dropping, eyes looking all over the place, no defense, slugging and swinging, and technique just goes out the door. And so in this video, what I'm gonna break down for you is the solutions and ways to train so you can solve that problem. Okay, the first thing is your footwork. You probably don't realize how much you're moving in sparring compared to your bag work, compared to your pad work and your shadow boxing. If you watch your shadow boxing, your bag work, there are a lot of stationary moments where you are standing still. You don't even realize how much you give yourself a break in that bag work, punching and then sort of standing still, or maybe moving and then standing still for a half a second while you throw again. But in sparring, if you look at your sparring, if you were to do, let's say, like a time lapse of your sparring session, you would find that you're all over the ring, all around the ring, moving towards your opponent, they're moving away, you're chasing them to the ropes, you're moving around the ring, your opponent's moving around the ring, they're coming and hitting you, you're retreating. So the first bottleneck in your sparring output, in your capacity, is your footwork capacity. Forget punching, forget head movement, forget defense. Your feet need to be able to move. If you want to get to 4 rounds of sparring solid, you need to be able to go 12 minutes of footwork. So the first thing that you're gonna do is at least a couple times a week, at least a couple workouts a week. You're gonna take 4 rounds. All you're gonna do is footwork around the ring, back and forth, lateral motion, back, in and out, pivots, pendulum step, whatever it is, your feet are not gonna stop. Hands up, chin down, and just move nonstop for 4 rounds. As you get better, you don't have to have the break in between the rounds. You can just go 6 minutes, take a minute break, do 6 minutes again. Or as you get even better, just after your skip rope, just do the 12 minutes straight. Your first bottleneck is your footwork. Within about a month to 6 weeks, you should be able to go 12 minutes straight, just moving nonstop around the ring. And don't make it easy on yourself, push yourself. It's not just gonna be you just casually, lightly bopping around. Move around that ring, tire yourself out. By 8 or 9 minutes, you should be feeling tired. Make sure that your footwork is not a bottleneck, it's not a limiting factor in your overall energy output. The next thing that you need to do to control the pace is work your defense. And when I say work your defense, I mean in a non-egotistical way, meaning that you don't feel like after you've blocked a bunch of shots that you now have to go get your sparring partner, that you now have to go lay the heat on them. There's nothing wrong with just standing right in front of your opponent and just blocking some shots, and then after, just taking a breath and being calm. As well, there can be nothing more discouraging for somebody who's throwing shots on you, for you to have blocked all their punches, all the punches in their combo. So every now and then it's good for you, good for your confidence, good for your defense to just let your opponent come. Let them come, block some shots, hang in the pocket a little bit, and then look at them calmly, take a breath, and then move and sort of walk them down. If you can get your defense up to that next level, you can really allow yourself those breaks in sparring and control the pace. Now, defense isn't easy. Defense doesn't necessarily come naturally. You're working on the bag, you're working on the pads, you're working in shadow boxing. It's very much offense heavy. So you've got to take rounds in your shadow boxing. Let's say you're doing 4 to 5 rounds shadow boxing per workout, or even more. Let's say you're doing 6 rounds of shadow boxing. Take 4 of those rounds and just move around and work on your defense. Don't worry about you're gonna get your offense out later. You can always go extra hard on the bag, or you can always do punch outs at the end. Take 4 rounds, and all you're gonna do is imagine combos coming at you, the jab, the double jab, the jab right hand, left hook, blocking body shots, jab body shot, jab uppercut, blocking all kinds of shots coming at you. Now, if you want a little bit of help with that, a while ago I created a free audio set where I call out the offensive side, the offensive combinations, and so as I call them out, you can block them. I'm going to leave a link to that in the video description below. It's free. Just go over to my website and download the audio, pop it in or put it on, and all you're gonna do is when you hear the calls, just work the defense that goes with those calls. Defense is gonna be your second gateway to controlling the pace, controlling your energy levels, and being able to work at the pace that you want so that you can last longer throughout the rounds. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and what advice you probably hear a lot is one of the best ways to control the pace and to back off your opponent is to throw heat. Give them something to think about. Give them a reason to respect you. From my own experience, I find that that works well in fights because now your opponent is second guessing walking into you. You're giving them something to think about. But in sparring, it actually can be 50-50, hit or miss. You throw heat in sparring and that's gonna light them up. That's gonna fire them up and they're often gonna come at you even worse, even harder than before. I would work on footwork and defense and other aspects that we're gonna cover first before considering throwing heat as a way to back off your sparring partner. Now, another way that you can control the pace in sparring is clinching. The problem is if you're in the amateurs still, you're not allowed to clinch. And once you clinch 2 or 3 times in a fight, if it's obvious that you're doing it, the ref's gonna call you for holding, you're gonna lose points. Clinching is something that I would recommend if the session is getting too intense, or maybe it's the end of the round and you just really need a breather, or maybe you got somebody who's, you're at a different gym and they're a little bit out of control and you want to slow the pace and throw them off, kind of give them a hard time, then clinching is fine. Or if you're a pro, then of course clinching is fine. You need to work on it as part of the game. All right, on to the next section, counter punching. You want to have at least 2 ways to counter every punch in your opponent's arsenal. Basically, that means if this punch is the last punch in the combination, how would you counter it? You want to have at least 2 ways to counter the jab, the right hand, the lead hook, lead uppercut, rear uppercut, overhand, overhand right, overhand left, and you want to have those for southpaw. Typically, it's either blocking and throwing, slipping and throwing, moving back and throwing, or throwing while they're throwing. Now, like I said earlier, you don't necessarily want to throw heat, but you do want your sparring partner mindful of the fact that if they attack you, there's a chance they're gonna get countered. If they make a mistake or if they don't move after they hit, they are gonna get countered. You've got to give your sparring partner something to think about, especially if you can tag them after they throw a certain shot, they're gonna think twice about bringing that combo again. Work on your counter punching specifically when you're in front of the bag. Imagine a shot come at you first before you throw back. Don't just throw. Imagine blocking the jab, right hand, counter, boom. Imagine blocking the right hand, left hook, counter. Imagine blocking the body shot and coming back with counters. You can start with that and work through each of the punches, work through simple combinations. Counter punching is another way that you can control the pace, make your sparring partner think twice about what they're bringing. Okay, so we covered the first few pieces, which are more along the lines of controlling the pace so that you're not getting into a punch-out war and a slugfest. But you do have to have the capacity. You do have to have the engine. Now, the first thing is that they always talk about train how you fight, train the way you fight. But the problem is, if you don't have a lot of sparring experience, you don't necessarily know what the fight feels like. So you don't really know how to train to prepare yourself for something that you don't fully understand. You probably don't really realize that when you're hitting the bag, working on the bag and training, you probably don't really realize that you're going at about 80-90% of your capacity. You don't realize that in sparring, you're going closer to 100. You're probably not throwing a jab or even a 1-2 on the bag the way you throw it in sparring when the pressure is on. Because in the heat of the moment, it's hard to be fully aware of everything that's going on. Take 1 or 2 workouts a week and you work on the bag with pure speed and power together. Now for this, the combos don't have to be complex. They have to be hard and fast. You have to move to the bag and you have to step out away from the bag. For this, I've created a little audio set, a free audio set, so that you can work through 4 rounds of this sort of intensity. And you can go to my website. I'm gonna leave a link in the video description below. You can go and you can download it for free. It's gonna walk you through about 4 or 5 rounds of exactly what I want you to do. The goal of these 4 rounds is simple combos at full out speed and power, throwing much more closely to what you throw in sparring. Once you get into this sort of audio series and start doing this, you're gonna realize how hard it is, how taxing it is on your body to throw with full speed and power. It might even just cut your output in half But as you work through this in the weeks and maybe in about a month, 4 to 6 weeks, you're gonna see a noticeable difference in your output and your speed and power levels in your overall endurance in your sparring. All right, next. Now we're still working along the lines of system capacity, of energy output. We covered controlling the pace earlier. Then we got into output with the power punching, high quality punching. Next thing is, and you're probably not gonna like it, intervals. The magic behind this is that techniques, technical skills and development take a long time to develop. They take years and years to develop. But energy systems, for the most part, can ramp up fairly quickly. If you take a high-level boxer and make them do nothing for 8 months or a year, get way out of shape. Once they get themselves back into shape, the boxing and all the skills and everything are gonna be there. So while you're developing your skills, you wanna try to have your system and your energy capacity running at full speed, at full tilt. Within 4 to 6 weeks, you can make some big gains in your cardiovascular system, in your cardiovascular development in a way that's gonna carry over to boxing. Simply enough, this is what you do. If you have a heart rate monitor, it's gonna make it easier. You're gonna go out, you're gonna warm up with a 5-minute run, 5-minute easy jog, and then you're gonna hit 4 intervals. 3 minutes at a strong pace, 1-minute break, you're gonna do that for 4 sets. The pace that you're gonna set is gonna be somewhere between 75 to 85% of your maximum heart rate. If you wanna figure out more on that, go look up the KARVONEN formula, factor that in, do the simple math on that, factor that into what your target zone is, and then you can figure out the level that you're supposed to train at. Now, if you can't run or you don't like running, other activities will work. Cycling, skipping rope, swimming, etc. The problem is you have to have a way to get your heart rate or the intensity up high enough. So as long as you can get the intensity up high enough, it's gonna work. Running, I find, is one of the easiest to get the speed and intensity up there, so that's why it's my favorite. So if you can run, go run. If you only have other options at your disposal, then you're gonna have to figure out the way to train to get the intensity up, to get your heart rate up high enough. All right, the last one, you're not gonna like it. Burpees. Now, there's nothing especially scientific about burpees, but the one thing that I know from my own experience, it takes a lot of energy to launch an attack, to decide that you're just gonna go for it. Step to your opponent, throw your combo. Burpees to me simulate that start energy to get things going. And since boxing is sort of like an explosive endurance sport, power endurance, repetitive burpees simulate that experience for me. Whenever I've been training burpees consistently, I'm always ready for sparring. As long as I'm doing all my regular training and burpees, the question marks are erased. Your goal, your first goal, is 100 burpees in 5 minutes. Now you may start where you can only do 10 at a time or 8 at a time, and that's fine. You can work it another way as well. You can do 10, that'll take you about 20 seconds, rest to the top of the minute, and then go for 10 minutes. So you're gonna get in your 100, it may take you 10 minutes. And over time, your goal is to slowly tighten that down till you can get to about 105 minutes. Now, 105 minutes is not the ultimate goal. That's just a place where I know when I'm at that level, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good for about 4 to 6 rounds of sparring, provided that I'm doing my other training. Burpees have always been a physical and mental insurance plan for me. Whenever I'm working them, I always feel that I'm doing something that my sparring partners or my opponents aren't willing to do. So there's sort of an intangible factor of willingness. I'm willing to do this nasty exercise. And some people love them. I love burpees, but most people, 90% of people hate them. And that's all the more reason to do them. All right, so for those of you getting into sparring, you're past the first initial hurdle, but you're struggling. I understand. I know how this is. I went through this. It took me, to really get solidly past 4 rounds, it took me about a year, and it took me figuring out a few things before I was solidly past there. I was always struggling around that point, especially when sparring against the better boxers in the gym who got better as the rounds went on. Even if you're not necessarily better than them, you still develop the energy capacity, and then you're able to spar with them 5 and 6 rounds. Even if they're getting the edge on you, at least you're able to go the distance. Crashing and burning around the 3rd or 4th round is very common. Take the advice in this video and work it. Put it into your training. They're not tips or tricks. They're not quick fixes. You gotta work these. But the reward is that once you work them and start to implement them, you will be past that barrier. And once you also get past that barrier, mentally you can relax too, because you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry all that day going into sparring, what's gonna happen, whether you're gonna make it through, whether everything's gonna fall apart. So I hope the advice in this video helps you beginner boxers out there who are sparring and struggling to get past that first wall, that first hurdle. Implement this into your training and let me know how things go. And for anyone out there who has experience with this already, leave some comments below, talk about your experience, share some of the things that helped you get over the hurdles that you faced. This sort of insight is always helpful for new boxers coming up the pathway and going through that experience. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.